Good morning. Before anything else, I need you to pause for just a moment, because what I'm about to share with you in the next few minutes has the potential to completely reshape the way you think about getting older. Most people walk into their 70s and 80s carrying a belief that has been handed to them without question, that this stage of life is about slowing down, shrinking your world, and quietly making peace with limitation. I am here today to tell you that belief is not only wrong, it is dangerous, and the medical world has been far too comfortable letting it go unchallenged. After spending more than 3 decades working with older adults as a physician focused on aging and long-term health, I have had the privilege of sitting with thousands of patients in their 70s and 80s. And within that group, I have watched something extraordinary. A small but remarkable collection of people who are not merely surviving their later years. They are thriving in ways that contradict almost everything the general public has been told about aging. A major long-term study that tracked adults between the ages of 70 and 85 over a 12-year period found that only 11% of people in that age range maintained full functional independence across every major area of health. 11%. That means nearly 9 out of 10 people were struggling in at least one critical way. But that 11%, those people were genuinely flourishing. And here is what matters most.
The things that set them apart were not lucky genetics or extraordinary circumstances. They were specific, measurable abilities. Abilities that can be assessed, practiced, and in many cases, meaningfully improved, starting today. Today, we are counting down 8 of those abilities, from number 8 all the way to number 1. And I promise you, by the time we reach the top of this list, you will hear something that most people have never encountered in these terms before. Something that the research now shows is arguably the single most powerful predictor of how long and how well you will live. Stay with me all the way to the end, because number 1 will genuinely surprise you. But first, leave a comment below and tell me your age, and which of these 8 abilities you feel you are currently strongest in. I read every comment, and your answer genuinely matters to how I shape the content I bring to this community.
Number 8 is the ability to walk continuously for 30 minutes at a steady pace, without stopping, without holding on to anything, and without significant discomfort. I understand that might sound straightforward, but I want you to understand what is actually happening beneath the surface when an older adult can do this. Walking is not just exercise. For the aging body, sustained walking is essentially a full systems check. Research from a major American university found that walking speed alone predicted 10-year survival rates in adults over 65 more accurately than many standard clinical tests. If you can maintain a pace of roughly 2.5 miles per hour for 30 consecutive minutes, you are demonstrating that your heart, your lungs, your muscles, your balance systems, and your neurological coordination are all working together efficiently. Here is why this becomes especially critical after 70. Every cell in your body contains tiny structures called mitochondria, essentially miniature power generators that convert oxygen into usable energy. Research from a leading medical institution has shown that mitochondrial efficiency can decline by as much as 40% after the age of 70, meaning your muscles are literally producing less energy from the same amount of oxygen. The remarkable thing is that sustained rhythmic walking is one of the most effective ways to stimulate the growth of new mitochondria. You are not just burning calories when you walk, you are rebuilding your body's energy infrastructure at the cellular level. If you can walk 30 minutes today without stopping, you are already ahead of the majority of people your age. If you cannot yet, that gap is your starting point, not your ceiling. Number 7 is the ability to sleep between 6 and 8 hours most nights without heavy pharmaceutical assistance, and to wake up feeling genuinely restored. After the age of 70, sleep stops being a lifestyle preference and becomes a biological necessity in a way that most people do not fully appreciate until they understand what is happening inside the brain during deep sleep. Research published in a leading scientific journal found that consistently disrupted sleep in adults over 65 was associated with a 68% increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease over a 7-year period. The reason comes down to a system in the brain that essentially functions as an overnight cleaning crew. During deep, uninterrupted sleep, fluid moves through the brain's tissue and flushes out toxic waste products, including the proteins most closely linked to cognitive decline. When sleep is fragmented or chemically suppressed, that cleaning process never fully completes. Aging naturally reduces the production of melatonin and compresses the deepest, most restorative stages of sleep. Research has shown that by the mid-70s, the deepest stage of sleep can be reduced by as much as 70% compared to young adulthood. But the older adults who continue to thrive treat their sleep environment and sleep schedule with the same discipline that a competitive athlete treats training. A cool, dark room, limited screen exposure in the evening hours, a consistent bedtime. If you are waking most mornings feeling genuinely rested without depending on heavy sedatives to get there, you are doing something that is far less common than you might think. Number 6 is the ability to stand on one leg for at least 10 seconds with your eyes open. I want you to take this one seriously, even though it sounds almost like a party trick. A major study published in a respected sports medicine journal followed over 1,700 adults between the ages of 51 and 75 and found that those who could not hold a single leg stance for 10 seconds had an 84% higher risk of death from any cause over a 7-year follow-up period. That number genuinely shook the medical community when it was published. Balance in the human body is managed by 3 overlapping systems: the inner ear, the body's deep positional awareness network, and vision. After 70, those 3 systems begin to lose their coordination with each other, and the result is a fall risk that most doctors dramatically underestimate. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related death in older adults. But research is equally clear that balance is highly trainable at virtually any age. Practices like Tai Chi, single-leg standing exercises, and yoga have been shown to reduce fall risk in seniors by up to 47% with consistent training. Find a wall, stand safely beside it, lift one foot, and count. 10 seconds puts you in exceptional company. Number 5 is the ability to maintain genuine, emotionally meaningful social connections. Not surface-level pleasantries, but real relationships where you are known, valued, and engaged. This one surprises many people when they see it on a list that is otherwise largely physical, but the science behind it is among the most powerful in all of longevity medicine. A major analysis that reviewed data from over 3 million adults across more than 100 studies concluded that social isolation carries the same mortality risk as smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. Loneliness is not an emotional inconvenience, it is a biological threat. For older adults specifically, prolonged social isolation triggers a state of chronic low-grade inflammation throughout the body, an underlying process that drives heart disease, cognitive decline, cancer, and virtually every major age-related illness. When you have strong reciprocal social bonds, your body produces hormones that actively suppress those inflammatory pathways. The longest-running study of adult development ever conducted, spanning more than 80 years, found that the quality of a person's relationships in midlife and beyond was the strongest single predictor of both physical health and happiness in old age. Not blood pressure, not cholesterol levels. Relationships. If you have people in your life who genuinely know you, depend on you, and show up for you, treat that as the medical asset it truly is. Number 4 is the ability to recall names, retrieve words, and remember recent events without significant delay or frustration. Cognitive agility, the speed and accuracy with which the brain accesses stored information, is one of the most telling indicators of neurological health as we age. Normal aging does involve some slowing of processing speed, and that is entirely expected. What becomes a serious concern is when retrieval begins to fail consistently and systematically, especially for recent experiences. The reason this happens is partly related to the gradual thinning of the insulating layer around neural pathways, which slows the speed at which signals travel through the brain. Think of it like a highway where the surface has started to crack. Traffic still moves, but not as quickly. What is genuinely remarkable is that the brain retains a degree of adaptability throughout life that science is only beginning to fully appreciate. Research from a major medical university has shown that adults over 70 who remain cognitively active, who read regularly, learn new skills, engage in strategic games, or challenge themselves with new information, show measurably thicker and more active brain tissue in key regions compared to their less active peers. Your brain can build new pathways at 75. That is not encouragement, that is documented biology. If you can hold a complex conversation, remember last week's events with reasonable clarity, and retrieve words without persistent frustration, you are operating at a level of cognitive vitality that places you firmly among the people who are aging exceptionally well. Number 3 is the ability to rise from the floor to a standing position without using your hands or knees for support. Before I explain why this matters so much, please approach this test with care. Do it near a sofa or with someone nearby. This movement was studied by a physician whose research became internationally recognized after it was published in a major cardiovascular journal. The study found that each additional point of difficulty in the sit-to-rise test was associated with a 21% increase in mortality risk. The reason this single movement carries such profound predictive power is because it cannot be faked. To rise from the floor without hand support requires muscular strength, flexibility, coordination, and body composition, all functioning at adequate levels simultaneously. You cannot compensate for a weakness in one area by leaning on another. After 60, the body begins losing muscle mass at a rate of roughly 1 to 2% per year, accelerating to as much as 3% annually after 75. This process, called sarcopenia, is one of the most underdiagnosed and genuinely dangerous conditions in older adults, and most people have never heard the word. What the research consistently shows, however, is that targeted resistance training, even in people in their 80s, can reverse measurable amounts of this muscle loss within 8 to 12 weeks. The body's capacity to rebuild does not disappear with age. It simply needs the right signal. If you can get up from the floor today with minimal or no hand support, please understand what a genuinely impressive thing that is. Number 2 is the ability to maintain a resting heart rate below 65 beats per minute and a blood pressure consistently below 130/80. Together, these two numbers represent what I consider the clearest snapshot of cardiovascular vitality available without any laboratory testing. More than 70% of adults over 65 have blood pressure elevated beyond healthy thresholds. A resting heart rate consistently above 80 beats per minute in older adults has been independently linked to a 32% increase in cardiovascular mortality risk in large-scale research. A low resting heart rate is a direct reflection of cardiac efficiency. It means the heart is strong enough to deliver the same volume of blood with fewer contractions, requiring less effort with each beat. High blood pressure, sustained over years, gradually stiffens and weakens the arteries in ways that quietly set the stage for heart attack, stroke, and kidney failure. The genuinely encouraging news is that regular aerobic activity, a dietary pattern rich in omega-3 fatty acids, colorful vegetables and polyphenols, and consistent stress reduction practices, including meditation, which research has shown can reduce systolic blood pressure by a clinically meaningful amount within 8 weeks of regular practice, all produce real, measurable improvements in these numbers, even in people well into their late 70s and early 80s. If your heart and blood pressure numbers are in healthy ranges, your cardiovascular system is performing at an elite level for your age group. And now we reach number 1, the single most powerful predictor of healthy, vibrant aging that I have encountered across more than 30 years of clinical practice, and the one that receives the least attention in mainstream medicine. Number 1 is the ability to wake up every morning with a clear, deeply felt sense of purpose, a compelling reason that makes the day worth beginning. I anticipate that some of you are thinking that this belongs in a self-help book rather than a medical discussion. I want to respectfully and firmly push back on that. The biology of purpose is one of the most rigorously studied areas in longevity research today, and the findings are nothing short of extraordinary. A major study that followed over 1,000 older adults for 7 years found that those who scored highest on measures of purpose in life had a 2.4 times lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, a 43% lower risk of stroke, and lived an average of 7 years longer than those with the lowest sense of purpose. 7 additional years of life. Not from a medication, not from a surgical intervention, but from a felt sense of meaning. The biological mechanism behind this is well understood. Purpose directly influences the body's central stress regulation system. When you wake up knowing why your day matters, your stress hormones follow a healthy, productive arc, rising in the morning to provide energy and motivation, then declining through the day. When that sense of meaning is absent, the system becomes dysregulated and chronically elevated stress hormones begin silently driving inflammation, breaking down muscle tissue, suppressing immune function, and accelerating cognitive decline. Research conducted across the world's longest-lived populations, communities in Japan, Italy, California, Costa Rica, and Greece, found that every single one of them had a cultural concept of purpose woven into the fabric of daily life. The name varied by language and culture, but the meaning was always the same: a reason to rise. One man I know of, a retired school teacher in his late 70s, came in with rapidly deteriorating health following retirement. His inflammation markers were climbing, his sleep had collapsed, and he described feeling as though the world had simply moved on without him. He had spent more than 3 decades teaching young people, and he missed it deeply. He found a volunteer tutoring program at a local school and began going in 2 days a week. Within 6 months, his health markers had measurably improved, his sleep had normalized, and there was a quality in his presence that had been entirely absent when he first walked through the door. He told me the children had given him a nickname and that they argued about who got to sit beside him. That, I will tell you with complete sincerity, is something no prescription can replicate. If you wake up each morning with people who are counting on you, with work that calls your name, with passions that are pulling you forward, or even with a garden that needs tending and a neighbor who looks for your wave, you are carrying the most powerful longevity medicine that exists, and it lives entirely within you. Let me leave you with this. We live in a culture that has quietly decided, without ever asking your permission, that the decades after 70 are a time of managed retreat, a time for accepting less, expecting less, and preparing for an ending. I am here today backed by decades of clinical experience and an enormous body of scientific research to tell you that this story is simply not accurate. The people we have described today are real. They walk with strength. They sleep with depth. They stand with balance. They connect with genuine love. They think with clarity. They rise from the floor and from hardship. Their hearts beat with quiet efficiency. And they begin every morning knowing exactly why. That version of aging is not reserved for a lucky few. The pathway to it is open. Your biology has not stopped responding to the choices you make today. Adults who begin aerobic training in their 70s show measurable cardiovascular improvement within 8 weeks. Adults who begin strength training in their 80s gain muscle. Adults who forge new friendships in their mid-70s show improved cognitive scores within a year. It is never too late, not even close. If this resonated with you, please subscribe and tap the like button. It costs you nothing, and it helps this content reach people who genuinely need to hear it. And leave a comment below telling me which of these 8 abilities you feel strongest in right now, and which one you're going to begin working on. I read every single comment. Because you matter. The years ahead of you still hold more possibility than you may currently believe. I will see you in the next video.